you have questions or comments, maybe save these questions and comments for later because we will have a portion for that. Now let's proceed with the next part of the lecture. May I call on Dr. Mellissa Lopez Reyes, the Exaltacion C. Ramos Chair in Test and Measurement, to present her study on the socioeconomic realities of college students.
Thank you, Karen. I know this is the perfect time and an audience for some hip-hop intermission.
Wala sa program.
Oh, syempre, wala. Surprise. If you want a crash course, if you know how to sing, just pretend and lip sync. And you can have the movement just by the shoulders. So, can we have, please?
I'm thrilled the White House called me tonight because
in boardrooms and in public office, most especially in policy and lawmaking bodies all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Lane, the Manuel G. Zamora Chair in Social Science, for your insightful lecture on the economic opportunities and the empowerment of women. So I think most of you have questions or comments. Maybe save these questions and comments for later because we will have a portion for that. Now let's proceed with the next part of the lecture. May I call on Dr. Mellissa Lopez Reyes, the Exaltacion C. Ramos Chair in Test and Measurement, to present her study on the socioeconomic realities of college students.
Thank you, Karen. I know this is the perfect time and an audience for some hip-hop intermission.
Wala sa program.
Oh, syempre, wala. Surprise. If you want a crash course, if you know how to sing, just pretend and lip sync. And you can have the movement just by the shoulders. So, can we have, please?
I'm thrilled the White House called me tonight because I'm actually working on a hip-hop album.
Volume, please.
It's a concept album about the life of someone I think embodies hip-hop, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. You laugh, but it's true. He was born a penniless orphan in St. Croix of illegitimate birth, became George Washington's right-hand man, became Treasury Secretary, caught beef with every other founding father, and all on the strength of his writing. I think he embodies the word's ability to make a difference. So I'm going to be doing the first song from that tonight. I'm accompanied by Tony and Grammy-winning music director Alex Lacamoire. Anything you need to know. I'll be playing Vice President Aaron Burr, and snap along if you like. How does a bastard orphan son of a whore and a Scotsman dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by providence, impoverished and squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar? The $10 founding father without a father got a lot farther by working a lot harder, by being a lot smarter, by being a self-starter. By 14 they placed him in charge of the trade and charter, and every day while slaves were being slaughtered or carted away across the waves, our Hamilton kept his guard up. Inside he was longing for something to be a part of. The brother was ready to beg, steal, borrow, or barter. Then a hurricane came, devastation reigned, and our man saw his future dripping down the drain. Put a pencil to his temple, connected it to his brain, and he wrote his first refrain, a testament to his pain. Well, the word got around, they said this kid is insane, man. Took up a collection just to send him to the mainland. Get your education, don't forget from whence you came, and the world is gonna know your name. What's your name, man? Alexander Hamilton. His name is Alexander Hamilton. There's a million things he hasn't done, But just you wait, just you wait. When he was 10, his father split, full of it, debt-ridden. 2 years later, see Alex and his mother bedridden, half dead, sitting in their own sick, the scent thick. And Alex got better, but his mother went quick. Moved in with the cousin committed suicide. Left him with nothing but ruined pride. Something new inside, a voice saying, Alex, you gotta fend for yourself. He started retreating and reading every treatise on the shelf. There would have been nothing left to do for someone less astute. He would have been dead and destitute without a cent of restitution. Started working, clerking for his late mother's landlord, trading sugar cane and rum and other things he can't afford. Scamming for every book he can get his hands on, planning for the future. See him now as he stands on the bow of a ship headed for a new land. In New York, you can be a new man. The ship is in the harbor now. See if you can spot him. Another immigrant coming up from the bottom. His enemies destroyed his rep. America forgot him, and me, I'm the damn fool that shot him. Alexander Hamilton, we were waiting in the weeds for you. You could never back down, you always had to speak your mind. But Alexander Hamilton, we could never take your deeds from you. In our cowardice and our shame, we will try to destroy your name. The world will never be the same, Alexander. Yeah, I'm the damn genius that shot him.
I thought that video embodies the universally appealing story of defying the odds posed by being a woman or being an immigrant or having experienced socioeconomic or material financial disadvantage at an early age. That was staged in the White House. I mean, it could have been Malacanang. It need not be hip-hop. It could have been Zarzuela. These are stories with great universal appeal, as I have said. And that, by the way, is the first song. It has been rehashed since. This hip-hop Broadway musical has been 7 years in the making, and that won the Pulitzer Prize for drama recently. And Hamilton is one of the founding fathers who happened to be an immigrant from the Caribbean, and the cast is Latino, Black, and which it now embodies the gender composition of current USA, even when the American history being portrayed is really mostly from Europe, European immigrants. And so that's what you get from wasting time YouTubing. It's a worthwhile enterprise sometimes. Okay. This is work. Okay. Let me, I have to, XC Ramos has been my friend for 3 rounds now. She gives me money, and so I have the pleasure to introduce this woman who I never had the chance to meet. Yeah, I in 2001, I think. So let me introduce what I know. Let me share with you what I know of her. I'm sorry. Mrs. Exaltacion C. Ramos's educational training and work experience were in both psychology and management. She had handled line management responsibilities in education and consulting engagements in industry. Her areas of consulting expertise included educational management, testing evaluation, research design, planning and implementation, human resource development and recruitment and placement. A former dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and a former professor at DLSU University, she earned her Master of Arts in Psychology at the University of Minnesota. Sorry, I still have to. Okay. There. At the University of Minnesota,
on Smith, Mond, and Fulbright scholarships. She also had special training in test construction and educational measurement at the Educational Testing Service in Princeton, New Jersey. She was a Doctor of Education candidate. Mrs. Ramos was Vice President for New Business Development, Directions International for Asia. Psychologist consultant for Employee Relations, Human Resources Division, Philippine Airlines. Manager of the Human Resources Division, International Rice Research Institute. She passed away at the age of 62 on 18 March 2002. Let me start with the premise, and this is the premise that gives rise to the first hypothesis, that students who aspire explore. I use the term aspiration just to be faithful to the scale's name, but let me begin now by explaining exactly what this aspiration is by presenting to you some of the survey questions that tap aspiration. The question posed to the participants. So if I have to mention the methodology first. What do you think are the chances that the following will occur in the future? No, so from slim to a lot. You will have a lot of expensive possessions. You will have a job that pays well. So this is what are the chances that you're going to be financially successful. Your name will be known by many people. You will do something that brings you much recognition. So that will be aspiring for social recognition. Conceptually and psychometrically, the aspiration for financial success and social recognition are distinct factors, but not separable. Distinct factors, but very much correlated. So throughout the talk, whenever I speak of aspiration, we keep in mind the question, what are the chances? It's not so much how much do you aspire for or how important is this for you, but what are the chances that this will happen to you in the future? Now, again, students who think that the chances are good will therefore begin to a greater extent and perhaps earlier to explore their potential or future career. So again, in this talk, when we speak of career exploration, keep in mind this basic question. To what extent have you behaved in the following way over the last 3 months? And there can be very concrete ways of getting to know potential career options, like investigating career possibilities, seeking opportunities to demonstrate work skills, or a little reflection on oneself, reflected on how your past integrated on your future career. Okay, so aspiration for financial success and social recognition is directly positively associated with career exploration. Aspiration in the past has often been examined as an outcome variable. No? Would parental aspiration predict child's aspiration? So status would predict financial aspiration and the like. But here we look at aspiration as the promoter or the instigator of the behavior of career exploration. When I see that my chances are good, I'll pursue and try to see what my options are. But it's not enough to know whether the chances are good for one to explore one's career. It's also important to have that certain sense of, yes, I can do it. Yes, I'm confident. Yes, I'm self-efficacious. So aspiration is not enough. Self-efficacy is needed for exploring. Actually jumping now to the hypothesis. And that, therefore, the two-pronged hypothesis of general self-efficacy mediates the relationship between aspiration and career exploration, and career decision-making self-efficacy mediates the relationship between aspiration and career exploration. Here we have the two general And the two levels of self-efficacy known to be, again, distinct from each other. In fact, studies have shown that general efficacy predicts task-specific efficacy, and that self-efficacy, although it's a known predictor of many useful behavioral outcomes, need to be task-specific. One could not just be self-confident in a general way across all tasks, but one is self-confident to perform specific tasks. Still, the notion of general self-efficacy has not lost its worth. I'm getting ahead of the slides. Okay, so just again to remember in a very concrete way what these self-efficacy variables are. The items from the survey questions for general self-efficacy are: you will be able to achieve most of the goals that you have set for yourself. When facing difficult tasks, you are certain that you will accomplish them. So the object of the items are components of the self. Career decision self-efficacy is one of the various task-specific efficacy. There's a math self-efficacy. There's a marketing self-efficacy. This one is the self-efficacy for making career decisions or doing things that will help us decide well regarding one's career. Use the internet to find information about occupations that interest you. Make a plan of your goals for the next 5 years. So how confident are you that you will be able to do these things? So in a pretty picture, say those who aspire explore, but aspiration is not enough. There's the mediating mechanism at two parallel levels of self-efficacy. People who think that chances are good, that the outcome that they're gonna come through, and the outcome is forthcoming. That assessment of good chances leads one to be self-efficacious, and when one is self-efficacious, I should use the term self-efficacy, then that self-efficacy leads to more exploration. This part of the diagram is the one that's easier to explain. In terms of empirical findings, it is a robust finding that self-efficacy is a predictor of many behavioral outcomes. The one that's a little bit more difficult to explain is how, or to convince myself about, is how aspiration would lead to self-efficacy. If we go by literature following Bandura's social cognitive theory, the sources of self-efficacy, what makes one confident, have been laid out, categorized by Bandura as master experience, vicarious experience, social persuasion. To some extent, perhaps aspiration can be related to any of this. There are also motivation and contextual factors. Is aspiration a motivation factor? But my probably a greater elaboration would have to be made on aspiration as a rightful source of self-efficacy. But the socioeconomic context of students' aspiration also need to be taken into account. So even when an aspiring immigrant, not yet a founding father of a country, has that sense of good chances that it's going to happen against all odds, the person's aspiration is of a socioeconomic nature. I mean, the ones that I'm measuring here, financial success and social recognition, and it grows amidst the backdrop of socioeconomic disadvantage or affluence. So the way aspiration directs self-efficacy and exploration may be weakened by socioeconomic disadvantage. But literature, so that's one, aspiration being directed to self-efficacy or aspiration being directed to exploration may be tempered, weakened by poverty, socioeconomic disadvantage. But then again, on the one hand, there's literature on adversarial growth, on hardiness and resilience, suggesting that existing unfavorable conditions may actually propel aspiration towards efficacy and exploration. And in the DLSU Department of Psychology Youth Development Research, we've seen snippets of this. So the third two-pronged hypothesis, SES moderates the effect of aspiration on general self-efficacy, and also on career decision self-efficacy, and SES moderates the effect of aspiration on career exploration. More specifically, isn't it that we have hypothesized a positive effect from aspiration to efficacy? Well, that positive effect is weakened in the face of lower SES. And isn't it that we have hypothesized a positive effect from aspiration to exploration? Again, that hypothesized effect is weakened by lower SES. And so diagrammatically, we showed the original diagram, but here's conceptually, diagrammatically, and SES now is, so these are the hypothesized effects, and these are hypothesized to be positive, but their magnitude will lessen amidst lower SES. Okay, what theories matter? Social cognitive theory matter. We have here the triad, really the reciprocal determinism amongst this triad of, but I downplay the reciprocality of that determinism. Yeah, given that this does not show how the behavior can influence the environment. So this is the triad of behavior. The outcome is behavior, it's exploration. And cognition, how I examine my chances of having a fine future, at least from a socioeconomic perspective. And vis-a-vis how I am now, again, socioeconomically. And vis-a-vis the environment, of course. So I cognize the future, I cognize the environment, and the environment is there, and my behavior. It's all in this diagram. What other theory matter? The social cognitive theory, again, to the extent that it incorporates self-efficacy. It should be straightforward to argue why self-efficacy would lead to exploration. What should be further argued, however, is the twofold hypothesis for why general and career decision self-efficacy would influence, in parallel, career exploration. So you've seen analysis, for example, where all the variables are task-specific. As in this diagram, all the variables are task-specific. They have to do with career decision-making of college students before careers even started. But there's one thing that there's one odd man out, the general self-efficacy. In other analysis, what they do is perform a hierarchical multiple regression analysis, place first the general self-efficacy, and then the task-specific self-efficacy would just kind of eat the crumbs of general self-efficacy and explain whatever it is that general self-efficacy does not explain. And the task-specific self-efficacy still manages to explain a lot. So there's also literature and there's analysis that says general self-efficacy predicts task self-efficacy, and you have one arrow pointing to another. But here, this is the model that looks at the general and the specific in and they play the same role. They play parallel roles in the model. And I'm sure you have a lot to say about that, as I have a lot to say about that, and definitely our discussant also has a lot to say about that. Okay, what theories matter? This is not exactly a theory, but this embodies or is shown in many empirical literature that looks at the contract at the construct of SES and says that this is an important construct because of its many social psychological correlates, from health practices to, in this case, careers, to family dynamics. Comparing those with lower and higher SES, but then, and of course, there are empirical findings on the effect of SES on self-efficacy. But what is of interest here is the SES moderation. So we had 339 second to fourth year students from a private university in Manila and a state university in Region 3. 43% were females. They come from various majors. There were 31% sophomore, 51% junior, and 18% senior students. I did mention about the Aspiration Index, and I also did mention about the General Self-Efficacy Index and the Career Decision Self-Efficacy. And the SES actually is a composite measure that includes parental education and occupational tenure and prestige, material assets, and perceived financial difficulties. These are of varying levels of measurement from the DLSU, Department of Psychology, Poverty and Youth Study. We have looked at the more useful measures of SES, put them together, taking into account their levels of measurement, and came up with the composite measure. Again, one detail here is that SES can be regarded as a multi-dimensional construct, so that one dimension predicts a well-being one way and another dimension predicts one being the other way. But in this study, I've chosen to keep it, as it has been kept in other studies, as a unidimensional measure. Preliminary analysis show no significant influences of gender, major, and university on self-efficacies, the mediators, and exploration, the outcome. Aspiration and SES are distinct factors. So we don't think that chances are good only for the poor, for the rich, and the chances are good only for the poor. And there are other predictors of aspiration, which of course, that's not what the study is all about. But the thing is here is that aspiration and SES are distinct factors, and we can actually study them regard them, in fact, as separate variables, one being the IV and the other being, yes, another IV, but also a moderator. And the general and career decision, self-efficacy, no surprise about that, are distinct factors. And in the analysis, I used the Pritchard and Hayes process macro for SPSS. Let me just, for those who love to order from Pritchard and Hayes process. So, may I have model 7, please? I did, if you see model 7, if you regard X as the, Karel, what's X? Yeah, what's the IV here? Aspiration. And then what's this? Self, and there are two. And we were allowed to, right? And general and task specific. And this is exploration, okay? And this is SES, yeah? And model 8 says, yes, SES moderates the path from aspiration to self-efficacies, but it can also moderate the path from aspiration to, the behavior of exploration. This differ because this is a mediator and this is an outcome, but I think they differ also in the sense that this is the actual behavior and this is more of an assessment of myself. So does SES moderate at the level of predicting not yet actualized behavior, or does it go as far as predicting the weakening of aspiration predicting a behavior? Model 59 is more comprehensive. The moderators work along the three paths, even the more distal. This one is proximal or first stage, and it also works as a moderator in the second stage. Actually, I'm interested in 7 and 8. I think the synchronicity or the compatibility of this is important in providing the rationale for why SES moderates. This is of a socioeconomic nature. This is directed towards the future. This is the present socioeconomic status. There's going to be some interaction there. But this one is just placed here just to roll out that possibility. Okay, so it's really Model 8 and Model 7 that's being tested. Model 7 is the final model, and which I place here with the paths that are significant, and all the paths are. So SES, this is Model 7. SES does not moderate the link from aspiration to exploration. You have good R-squares, and this is a bothersome. I double-checked. I double-checked the factor scores, the direction of the scores, what high scores mean and what low scores mean. And I'm gonna double check again. But everything is consistent, as predicted, as intuitively true. But those with higher SES have lower career self-efficacy and lower general self-efficacy. We have surprising findings like that in the 2014 study of ours, of myself and Isabel. Actually, maybe it's the wrong sense in which we think of the socioeconomically disadvantaged. It can be explained why they have they work better, they work harder, because let me just say poorer, because it's easier to say than socioeconomically disadvantaged. But I do not, by poor, I don't mean really the poorest of the poor. Okay, so let me be politically incorrect, but quick in the way I say things. Yeah. So, youth from poorer families are given more tasks, and that really aid in their development. Youth from richer families experience psychological distress. And when we submitted this to the reviewer, it wasn't one of our hypotheses, it just came up. And so we kind of just said it because it needs to be said, and we didn't explain why. And then the reviewer said, this is exactly the same finding I found and someone else found, and you have to mention this in the discussion even if it's not part of your research problem. So again, maybe there's this adversarial growth happening there. But again, it came up here, I'm going to check it. But see, if this is going to be reversed, all these things are going to be reversed and they're going to be negative. That's harder to explain. So, but here it's the more I aspire, the more I explore. The more I aspire, the greater my self-efficacy, the more I explore. And SES actually contributes to self-efficacy, but not to exploration in this unexpected way. But again, that's not one of the hypotheses. It's just part of the analysis for Model 7. Okay, the current study's results. And these are parts of the diagram I've earlier shown. There's a conditional indirect effects. This is the indirect effect. Positive path, positive indirect effect of general self-efficacy, but this link is stronger at higher SES. So, the greater the possibility of those with higher SES to transcend this path. And then we can actually show this, but I haven't gotten around to show the interaction plot showing that the lower the SES, the weaker the aspiration. The weaker the path from aspiration to general efficacy. SES does not weaken the path. Oops, yeah, there's a prototype interaction plot. And this is the same for career decision self-efficacy. Conditional indirect effects of career decision self-efficacy are larger at higher SES. And we can, from the data, draw interaction plots showing that the lower the SES, here, the weaker the aspiration, the weaker the career aspiration, career decision, SE path. So if you think of the x-axis as the aspiration and the y-axis as the career decision, and this would now be how aspiration predicts career decision self-efficacy in a positive way, then here's the prediction for the higher SES, and here's the prediction for the lower SES. And because this is lowered in lower SES, then the conditional indirect effects is then lower at higher SES. Okay, and the current study continues. What function does, and these are things that I think if we have the time, we can discuss, or one thing that I'm interested in knowing, and this is at the heart of the problem, is what function does SES serve given its moderating effect is proximal and not distal. So earlier studies show a simple moderation. Here, we're able to tease out now the nature of the moderation. It's proximal, coming much earlier, first stage, than later, than distal or second stage. And the moderating effect is on self-efficacies and not on the behavior. This needs to be tied down to SES as a social psychological construct beyond being an actual material resource. Yes, that's the outcome because they don't have this. So it's really more than that. And then we need to link aspiration to the other sources of self-efficacy as theorized by Bandura, and review the nature of the distinction. The argument, the discussion, the discourse hasn't stopped actually between general and career decision self-efficacy. And still we ask, what is the final best mediation model, even in this very particular problem? Yeah, theory-wise, but theory is only as good as our data are. You can have a very elegant theory, but it falls flat when it confronts data. So I am in perfect agreement with them that when one writes, we have to keep in mind what the actual result is and then write from that vantage point. So theory-wise and data-wise, what is the final or best mediation model? And again, I'm quite not convinced yet that aspiration can be easily disentangled from SES. This is not part of the study, but we can imagine profiles of aspiration and SES and disabuse ourselves of the possible wrong notion that the poor think their chances are not good and the rich think that their chances are good. We can examine youth experiencing financial difficulties and they think the chances for a bright future are good, and of youth experiencing living in affluence who think that the chances for a bright future aren't good. I guess that ends my lecture, and thank you very much. Simon.